We'll see how much noise reduction gets rid of that. Welcome to Crown Heights. Doing another review. What I want to talk about now is a really great film that I've actually watched 3 times now called Sisters with Transistors. And it is from 2020. It's a documentary film directed. I believe this is the woman's first feature-length film, and she did an amazing job. Her name is Lisa Rovner, and she became fascinated, my understanding, of course all hearsay, when she read an article about female electronic musicians who had been overlooked in the history of electronic music. Now, as always with this, take that with a caveat, because if you're deeply immersed within the subculture, you're going to know these people. But if you're not, this is a wonderful jumping off point. And I'll try to give recommendations as to further things that you can look at and study. But the film, about an hour and a half long, and the list of people that they cover is stunning in its breadth and its depth. Yeah, it starts with Clara Rockmore, you have Delia Derbyshire, you have Daphne Oram, Eliane Radic, Bebe Varon, Pauline Oliveiras, Marianne Amasher, Susan Ciani, and Laurie Spiegel. And the fact that they found all this footage or used other footage, because there's not a lot of material for a documentary filmmaker to work with on this subject, they make it amazingly present and refreshing to watch. And it's narrated by Laurie Anderson, which won me over right there immediately, because Laurie Anderson was one of my first entry points into electronic music. And that's due to a very good friend of mine, David. Hi, Dave. Back in high school, this is in the mid-'80s, he discovered Laurie Anderson's album, Big Science. And I believe right around the same time, Home of the Brave came out, and we went to see it. I seem to remember seeing Laurie Anderson live, but, Bear of Limited Intelligence, yeah, that whole type of thing. So, you have a brilliant female electronic musician that is narrating this, and her voice is it's always great. I love Laurie Anderson. But the film starts with Clara Rockmore, which if you have a Moog, whatever you want, I love watching hipsters freak out over that. But if you have a theremin made by you're gonna know Clara Rockmore, because she's the woman on the DVD that accompanies with it, teaching you how to play the theremin. And there's a good reason why, because she actually knew theremin, she worked with him closely, and she demonstrated his devices for years and years. So the film starts with footage of her in New York in 1934 performing a concerto. And she talks about how another musician told her that hearing the theremin in her hands was like hearing a soul sing. And it truly was. But she also talks about what a freak she was. Not only because, she was a trained violinist who abandoned the violin to play the theremin. So, yeah, I don't want to ruin too much of that because it's amazing. Like, most of this I'll just gloss over because you really need to see this and enjoy, the discoveries. Then they go to Delia Derbyshire. It shows her in 1965 in the BBC Radiophonic Workshop, and she's demonstrating how she creates her pieces of music, which I have always loved Delia's work because it is lonesome and nostalgic while it doesn't sound electronic all the time. I mean, if you only know the Doctor Who theme, yeah, it's got the filter sweep and all that, but find more of her music and there's just something in it. But I digress. In the clip, she's in the Radiophonic Workshop showing how they are using their sound generators, oscillators, with square waves. This is the amazing thing, because I saw this on YouTube the other day. It was one of the classic albums. Can't remember which one it was, but it was one of the very early electronic albums. And somebody said, big deal, you can do this in 5 minutes in Ableton. And it's just like, yeah, you don't understand the years intervening. Anybody can follow an idea, but creating that idea, that is the hard part. And you see Delia Derbyshire, this is the other thing about this film. the importance of tape recorders cannot be overstressed. And I love that this kept on popping up throughout the film. And she shows, like, she's using these tone generators to create different sound waves and stuff and filtering them. But it also shows her with tape, recording objects, slowing the tape up, speeding it up, slowing it down, cutting it, looping it, using various tapes, and looping in different rhythms. It's great. Just for that footage alone, it is wonderful. Then you go to Daphne Oram. Like, without Daphne, there would not be a BBC radiophonic workshop. I mean, she was instrumental, wanted it. And she was amazing because she also was trained as a musician, but she turned down a spot at the Royal Academy of Music because she was fascinated with electronics. And this is in the 40s to 50s. So there wasn't any support for this. People didn't know how to wrap their heads around what these people were creating. So she leaves the BBC Radiophonic Workshop and opens up her own electronic music studio. The sheer brass of this woman is amazing, and it shows graphic representation of electronic scores, and it's just, watch it, it's wonderful. Then they go to one of my personal favorites, Iliane Redic, French woman. She worked with Pierre Schaeffer, assistant to Pierre Henry. He actually installed 2 tape recorders in her apartment because they could not work in the studio together and hear what was going on. While she was working with these tape recorders, she discovered her feedback technique, which she used for a lot of her work. And this is just, holding a microphone in front of a speaker, and she would just sit there long amounts of time and minutely adjust that microphone. And when you listen to these compositions, I love listening to her triptychs. I will borrow Kathleen's Grado headphones all the time, go in, just listen to that. It's astounding. The work that woman did, it's so beautiful. It just blows me away. Next, we go to Baby Baron. They talk about when she married her husband, Louis, in the very late 40s. Louis's cousin gave them a tape recorder, and as she says, they were probably the only ones in the country at the time who had that machine. They moved to Greenwich Village, very early 50s, and very quickly they become the people that all the avant-garde artists go to work with in recording sounds and soundtracks for avant-garde film, for just different works, whatever. This is a wonderful thing that you see about this time too. Everything is not divided into little discrete boxes. People are just flowing through each other or bouncing ideas off each other. It's just so good to see in this day and age. But Baby Baron, you probably know her best for the Forbidden Planet soundtrack. And that soundtrack is amazing. I absolutely love it. But when they showed films of Anais Nin, and there's a beautiful statement in here that I've loved forever. Anais Nin said that the music of Baby and Louis Baron sounded like a molecule stubbing its toe. That is it's so good. It's absolutely perfect. But they talk about Baby and Louis, and Baby was a trained musician. Louis was into building the electronics, and because you had to build everything at the time. And they would build these circuits and then just listen to them and have hours of tapes. They taped everything, and then Baby could keep all those different sounds within her head and go back and find the sound she wanted to use in a composition, knew where it was, and added in. So it's a beautiful symbiotic relationship between the two. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Then we have Pauline Oliveiras. If you know anything about modern audio culture, you've run into her ideas of deep listening. She talks about, once again, the tape recorder. Her mother sent her a tape recorder, and this was her entry into sound as well. She would do field recordings out her apartment window in San Francisco. And she would use her bathtub as a reverb, and for filters, she would place microphones inside different lengths of cardboard tubes. And it's just going back to whoever the Ding Dong was it, said you can do this in Ableton in 5 minutes. Do you think these people have the patience to place microphones within cardboard tubes and, use your bathroom for a thing and go through hours of tapes? No, you don't. So, after that, we get into Marianne Amersher. Love her. Absolutely love her. She talks about she started off placing 8 microphones around Boston Harbor, and about 1 a.m, she would go to her studio and listen to these microphones, and she realized that different areas had different tones. And this woman, I just described her to Kathleen as a Valkyrie of sound. She absolutely was. There's wonderful footage of her in her house outside of New York, and it looks like Grey Gardens with just speakers and mixers, and you see Thurston Moore there, and Marianne Amersher is like, we're gonna rock this fucking house down, and Thurston Moore's just like, he's covering his ears and he's kind of looking at the camera like, it's beautiful. I love that so much. And then of course you have to talk about Suzanne Ciani. Everybody knows and loves Suzanne Ciani. I love the fact that they brought up in this that she found freedom in advertising. She could take her buchla, make these sounds that she was in love with, and then use them in advertising because nobody could tell her what to do because nobody understood what she was doing. They just heard the final product and went, Buemo, that's what we're using. So that part is beautiful. And they end with one of my personal favorites. I keep on saying they're all my personal favorites, but they are. Laurie Spiegel. And Laurie Spiegel was always interested in music, but I'm not quite sure why she didn't pursue it originally. They go into it a little bit in the film. So she majored in social sciences, but then she says, leaves, goes to New York to study because she knows she'll never be satisfied if she doesn't take at least a chance. While at Juilliard, she is introduced to Morton Subotnick, which, if you don't know Morton Subotnick, just go Google him, you'll find out. And that's where electronic music opens up for Laurie Spiegel. Laurie Spiegel was pretty amazing because she worked at Bell Labs, and she was working on one of the earliest Unix machines because what she wanted wasn't there. So she programmed what she wanted, and at the time, they had the most basic of compilers. C was still being developed, so she's using C as it's being developed on this very specific machine compiler for what they had there at Bell Labs. There's a great documentary on Laurie Spiegel that's available here on YouTube. There's also one called The Derbyshire Effect, I think, or The DeLeo Effect. I'll link both of those down below because there's further into Delia Derbyshire, and I believe Daphne Oram has one. I told you I'm a little bit rabid about this stuff. But Laurie Spiegel, in this other documentary, it's not in this film, she talks about Bell Labs. At one point they came in and they had replaced the machines they were using with a new machine that was supposed to be better. Problem was, all the tools that they had developed were machine specific to that one, so all that work was lost. So she had to start over again. So the woman is simply a powerhouse, and that's what I love about this film. So we've gone through the overview. Whoever edited this film, I think there was multiple editors on it. They did such a brilliant use with what they had, because I would say a good companion piece to this film is I Dream of Wires, which more specifically focuses on modular systems, but it gives you a good, they kind of complement one another. But you will see a big difference in filming styles between I Dream of Wires, which is mostly interviews with enthusiasts, and Sisters with Transistors, which has a lot of additional footage. Like, you will see the avant-garde films that the Barons worked on, and you will see different home movies and all this type of thing. So visually, it's very appealing, and it moves along, and it keeps you very much entranced with the film, even if you're not an otaku for this type of thing, I guess is the best way to put it. For a lay audience, they will have no problem watching this film, and it is highly entertaining. And another thing that would be good to watch with this is Marcus Wernerhead, who is a filmmaker of his own. He assisted Lisa Rovner in making this film. He made a very good film. I believe it was shown on the BBC. It's called Others Like Me, the oral transmission of cum transmissions and throbbing gristle. That you can find on YouTube. I'll definitely link that down below. So it's another kind of shows everything that's going on. That type of thing. That would be a great one. And then, let me just pull this out. This is right in my reading pile right beside my chair. If you really want to dig deep, I would recommend Audio Culture, Reading Modern Music. Get this on Amazon. It's a textbook, so buy it used because, they do the constant revision, so each year they can charge students for a copy of the book that, has very little changes made. Yay, academia. But you can buy it used very cheaply. Within it, you will find Pauline Oliveiras and some others that are in this film they're writing, plus other people, and it's a great jumping off point. If you are interested in anything at all in this topic, I would highly recommend all those, and only the book you have to buy, and you can find that used pretty cheaply. So, yeah, Sisters with Transistors. I'll link to the website where I believe you can purchase the DVD. Otherwise, trying to find it on streaming, yeah, you might have to hoist the black flag on that. But I do believe it should be seen by a lot more people. And I didn't see enough people talking about it on YouTube, which is pretty much my criteria. I want to show the stuff that people don't really see, and it's great. I mean, it's just wonderful. Anyways, I know I'm rambling. Love you all, and see you later. Bye.